On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, in order to set up maybe the greatest fake comeback of all time, the Toronto Raptors had to play two of the most heinous quarters of basketball you'll ever see. Worth it.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors. It is Wednesday, February the 25th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Raptors for 12 seasons on various platforms. You know where to find my stuff. It's on Blue Sky. It's on Instagram. You can join us, of course, as always, for free in the Locked On Raptors Discord server as well. Link in the description of the podcast. And we're off and running here on your Wednesday edition of Locked On Raptors, breaking down a 116-107 loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder in a game that featured 8 of the most rollicking minutes you or I have seen from this team all season long. Did it come on the heels of 2 truly wretched quarters? Absolutely. We'll talk about what went wrong in said wretched quarters coming up a little bit later on. We got the good, the bad, the of course, but this is the warm, happy, fun times podcast. And of course, we're going to start with what went right in the fourth quarter as the Raptors nearly brought this thing over the finish line. They were down by 25 in the third. They go on a 21-3 run in the first 8+ minutes of the fourth quarter and tie it up at 101, only for the Thunder to then snatch it back and leave us all feeling a little bit sad and dejected. But man, oh man, was that run a lot of fun. Before we dive into that, just a quick housekeeping note. You may have noticed on Spotify the last couple of days, the audio of the podcast is not properly uploading. We're working on a fix. We're kind of figuring it all out and dealing with all the relevant parties. It is available on Apple Podcasts. It's on YouTube as always. So if you found us here and you're a Spotify listener, thank you for doing that. And if you know someone who listens to the podcast on Spotify who has no idea what's going on, tell them what's up. And it'd be much appreciated if you go ahead and do that. All right. Let's jump on into the good stuff. And boy, oh boy, was it some good stuff in the first 8 minutes of the fourth quarter for the Raptors after, again, like a couple of really nasty quarters in the second and third that really left you feeling a little bit blue about things. The Raptors come out. And I do think this was just like a killer example of the immense impact of Scottie Barnes, first and foremost. In a game, the Toronto Raptors lost by 9 points, in which every player other than Scottie Barnes was a minus in their minutes on the floor. Scottie Barnes was a plus 18. I'm not even sure how that math works, but it's I'm reading it right here. It says here, plus 18, everyone else a minus. Pretty insane stuff. He was unbelievable. And the fourth quarter really did start and sort of got rolling because Scottie Barnes' defense is just otherworldly. He had 2 of the nastiest blocks I've seen from him all season long, and he has just made a routine habit of doing nasty blocks night after night. He had the one, I think, on a Cason Wallace drive that he sent into the third row. He had one, I think, Chet Holmgren. Like, he just loves to block Chet Holmgren. He had one in the first quarter as well, where he totally swatted him. Going back, obviously, to the win over OKC on the road, where he blocked Chet Holmgren at the buzzer. Scottie, just like, so good. And even on a night where he just like wasn't that great offensively, at least efficiency wise, he was only 7 of 17, 0 of 3 from downtown. He only grabbed 3 rebounds in this game. Kind of a weird thing, although I think he was very much in the mix on a lot of rebounds. He forced a big jump ball, fighting for a board with Cason Wallace down the stretch. You know, this was a night where the Raptors struggled on the glass pretty mightily, as Isaiah Hartenstein was just enormous and doing a lot of stuff to make life hell on the glass. But even with that, I thought Scottie just like so instrumental to all of the good things that happened for the Raptors in the fourth quarter. At many times in this game, and maybe more so even in the previous quarters, the fourth, I think he only might have had 2 points in the fourth quarter, but like some of the best offense they had in this game was Scottie, just take the ball and drive to the rim and slough a dude off with a shoulder bump, please. Because they just couldn't get a whole lot else going against the absolutely disgusting Thunder defense. Again, only scored a couple late. He got blocked a few times, had a few tough misses around the rim, but I thought the process was sound, and they were, frankly, the best looks they were getting all night long. Like the Raptors shot pretty horribly in this game. We'll talk about the rim issues they had and sort of how that led to everything else. It kind of spiraled out of control, but I thought the way Scottie was kind of playing with force, and also, again, just like the defense, man, just the disruption, the steals, the turnovers, the sort of involvement in every single possession. It felt like so much of that run was just highlight defensive possession after highlight defensive possession leading out the other way. And look, the Raptors didn't play great offense down the stretch of this game. They had pretty long swoons where they couldn't get anything to go. I think it was stuck at 101-91 for a couple of minutes, and like they weren't exactly, filling it up in that quarter, but they were doing enough, and the defense was holding up so well. And it wasn't just Scottie. Of course, Scottie is the sort of guy who stirs the drink, but I thought Jacoby Walters' on-ball defense, Jamal Shedd's on-ball defense, both were just outstanding in this game. And Walter, I mean, he's one of the candidates for the good later on in the show. I'm probably going to talk about someone else, so maybe I'll just sing his praises right now. He didn't really hit any threes in the fourth quarter. All of his threes came in the first three quarters, but without those threes, he goes 5 of 7 from downtown. The Raptors are not even in sniffing distance of the comeback they made. He was awesome in this game, and his on-ball defense, the tenaciousness, the screen navigation, the hands, same for Jamal Shed. I thought this was one of his best stretches of defense all season long. I've been a little bit sort of up and down on Shed's defense this year. I think he gets a little bit over aggressive, gets out of position quite a bit, but in the fourth quarter of this game in particular, fighting over screens, staying glued to guys, forcing, tough decisions and wobbly handles on drives. He was so good. Obviously hit a couple of massive threes as well. The one he hit to tie it up, just one of the loudest crowd pops I think the arena's produced all season long as well. I was watching on TV, but I could feel it through my TV, just how crazy it was going when that three went down to tie it at 101. And I also, flowers are due. We're going to talk about RJ Barrett later on, but I thought this was one of the best defensive quarters I've seen from RJ Barrett too. It's like totally locked in on the string, had one possession where he got the hand in and forced a turnover. Alex Caruso beefed it and knocked it out off his leg. And then he also had a huge block on a baseline cut. He was the last line of defense, the only guy who was stopping an easy layup, and he totally swatted it, kept control, went back the other way. Really good night from RJ Barrett, and I think this was some of the best defense we've seen from him all season too. But yeah, this was just like as inspired as it gets, and a really good way to kind of ease the bad feelings that I think a lot of people might have been feeling had they just kind of ridden this game out and lost the way it seemed like they were going to lose after three quarters. And look, do you want to fall down 25 to the Thunder without Shea or Jalen Williams? Even yes, understanding they've been good without Shea. They're 7-3 without Shea. They've barely had Jalen Williams all season long. Like, this is still a good team. They're extremely well coached. Their defense is absolutely absurd even without those guys. Maybe it's even better without those guys. Like, somehow Shea Gilgeous-Alexander's like the 6th best defender on that roster. They're monsters, and they're a tough opponent. They beat the Cavs on Sunday, all of this, but wasn't it terribly encouraging stuff during the second and third quarters when the Raptors just felt like they were completely lost and spooked and totally unable to kind of punch back. But that fourth quarter, man, like, I thought it was pretty telling and really encouraging that they, in fact, like we talked about on the show yesterday with Big V, some of the things we were looking for down the stretch was like, can the Raptors, when they come up against these teams that are kind of throwing their weight around, they're handsy, they're tough, they're elbowy, all this stuff, can the Raptors match that? And I thought they really punched back in that fourth quarter and were just as physical, just as sort of, gnarled and nasty as the Thunder were. And it paid off with that 21-3 run. The Thunder started the quarter 1 of 15 from the field, just ridiculous stuff. And I think, again, it doesn't absolve them from what went wrong in the previous couple quarters entirely. And there's some stuff in there we'll get into, some pretty systemic issues with what the Raptors are doing, particularly on offense, that I think are, going to have to be figured out if they want to do anything in the playoffs. But I do think you can take at least a little bit of a silver lining from this one, that they had that punch back in the fourth quarter and found ways to make it work. And just we're there to match what is maybe the most physical team in the NBA this side of the Detroit Pistons. It was really encouraging stuff. And so, for a snowy Tuesday night in February, for a team that's 10 games over 500 still, you could do a lot worse. And it's nice that they kind of salvaged the vibes of the night with that incredible comeback. And, as fake comebacks go, I mean, kind of on the all-time list. Does it count as a fake comeback if you actually tie it? I think probably in sort of canon it does, because they still lost. But, we had a lot of experience with fake comebacks a couple years ago. I think the Tampa season was a big fake comeback year. The Jakob Poeltl trade season, that was a big fake comeback year. This was as thrilling and rollicking as you're going to find in the fake comeback category for sure. Anyway, we're going to come back into the side, get into the reason why they needed to have such a rollicking comeback. They were pretty terrible for 2 full quarters in this game. We will talk about what dogged them in those quarters, and what about it was sort of an outlier, uncharacteristic stuff? What is more concerning as far as bigger picture endemic issues? We'll do that, getting to it in just a second here. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? Maybe you got the itch when the Raptors were in the finals and you went to a game back in 2019 and you think, I got to do that again. FanDuel is giving you that chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love futures this time of year. You know, if I am going to do futures, if I'm going to do sports wagering, it's always going to be on futures. Feeling a hunch. I think the Wolves are going to make a run to the conference finals or through the NBA, through to the finals in the Western Conference. They're my dark horse. I'm going to throw a few bucks on them, that type of thing, right? You know, I've won some money betting on teams to win the NBA championship early as sort of, in the door early type of situations. The Nuggets a couple years ago are an example. Futures can be a pretty fun way to go and do it. And now you can be sent to the NBA finals for doing it, which is very cool. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back at it here before we dive on into those hellish second and third quarters for the Raptors last night. I do want to remind you that you can check out the Locked On Raptors Everydayer Club right now. You can sign it up at the link in the description of the podcast. If you go there, it's $5 a month, $50 for the year. It gets you ad-free episodes of the show. Helps me out big time when you do it as well. I very much appreciate the patronage. And if you've enjoyed this podcast for free for many years, you're an everyday listener, you just want to get the uninterrupted ad-free version, you can go and pay for it now. $5 a month, $50 for the year, and it's you got extra perks as well. The Locked On Discord with listeners of Locked On shows from across the globe is very cool. Our Raptors Discord staying the same, staying free, but that other one is a lot of fun too, where we talk about all kinds of things, NBA at large, the Olympics, surely the World Baseball Classic is going to come up in there. It's a great place to talk about sports online with friends in a place that isn't toxic, so come hang out. Okay, let's get to the not so pretty part of this game, the dark underbelly of this game, if you will, the second and third quarters, in which, again, like some of the stuff that went wrong, kind of one-off, kind of stuff you'd maybe expect against a team like the Thunder with the defense they have, and some other stuff that, kind of continues some recurring through lines we've been talking about for most of the season. This was a game where their transition attack just completely got shut off. And this happens when you get into kind of a boiled down half court game sometimes. And the Thunder are an exceptional transition defense team. Sometimes you're just not going to be able to spam transition to rack up your point totals. The funny thing is, the Raptors didn't score very well in the half court in this game, and we'll get to that. Only a 95 offensive rating in the half court. They scored worse in transition in this game. 93 points per 100 possessions in transition. They actually cost themselves on a points added per 100 basis, cleaning the glasses mark that sort of gauges transition effectiveness. They were negative points in terms of what transition was giving them. They were just kind of really ineffectual when they got it on the run, outside of maybe the first quarter where they had a few moments. Otherwise, really rough stuff. Again, this is something that won't always be a problem to this degree against other teams. The Thunder are the best transition team on defense in the entire NBA. And, on a night where they were also scoring a lot, and we'll get into that, the second and third quarters, like you're just not getting those runouts off of misses the Raptors have lived on all season long. And this is what's going to happen in the playoffs, right? Like, I still think they'll be able to manufacture some running opportunities here and there because they're good at it. It's one of their strengths. They'll be able to do it better than most, but you're going to have to figure out ways to score in the half court. And we'll talk about the issues of the half court in just a second. I do think the biggest issue in this game, and this is maybe more a thing that you're not totally concerned about because it has been not really a characteristic of them all season long, was I thought their defense in this game was about as rough as it gets. It was just very discombobulated, very unsure of what it was trying to do. They give up 73 points combined in the second and third quarters of this game and just did not look like themselves. Transition defense was a mess. There were so many instances where it was just poor communication, missed assignments, very frantic, two guys going one way, one guy totally getting left open, just like a very unusual, because the Raptors, like, they're right up there with the Thunder as far as transition defense goes. They're a very good transition defense team, and they just totally lost the plot in the middle of this game. Again, not something I'm worried about being a longer term concern. This was not a great overall defensive game for sort of like the on the string stuff we've seen from the team. And like that's waxed and waned at times, as it does with any team, right? It's hard to maintain full locked in on the string, tethered basketball on the defensive end for 48 minutes every single night. Everyone's going to have lapses, but I thought in this game, miscommunicated switches. It didn't seem like they were totally sure what they wanted their pick and roll coverage to be. They were going under sometimes and kind of confused because Cason Wallace is not really a good shooter, but like he was shooting well in this game. So do you go over? Do you go under? Again, like miscommunicated switches. I thought in particular, we'll talk about it later, but Mamu had a really rough night defensively. And yeah, just like, I don't think there was any outside of maybe Mamu, but even then, like, I don't think anyone was like particularly awful in an on ball sense. I actually thought Walter was quite good. Shed was quite good. I thought Emmanuel quickly had a really good defensive game in this one. You know what Scottie's all about. It was in that rotation when the Thunder were able to kind of get the ball swinging side to side, and you had to make decisions and, have those quick synapses firing. That's where the Raptors kind of let themselves down. And I do think to an extent that was caused by their offense just being so in the mud. And I think, we've rarely seen this year. Again, not really an endemic issue to the team where their offense has kind of bled into bad defense all the time. It's more been, I think the other way, where when they have rough defensive nights, it kind of leads to the offense struggling because they can't spam transition as much. In this game, like, again, normally throughout the season, when they've had rough offensive games, they've been able to kind of keep pace and keep games close by being just like a dogged defensive team. But I thought their offense in this one was so rough that it kind of bled into a really rough night for them in transition defensively. And a big part of it was they just couldn't hit anything at the rim. Only 19% of their shots came at the rim, first of all. It was a damn good thing they shot 47% from deep in this game, because without those 18 threes going down, they had no hope. The rim protection of Hartenstein and Holmgren together was just absurd. The Raptors shot just 40% at the rim overall in this game. And I think it was on those misses, those blocks around the rim, the missed layups, the sort of just kind of duffing it when a guy's deep on the floor, has deep position. Like, that's where the Thunder really made their hay, because when you miss chippies, like, there's few things more damaging than missing a layup or giving back possession when you have guys deep on the floor and other guys on the other team are out running out. There were a couple of like tapped out rebounds, and, bless Colin Murray-Boyles for trying, because he was up against the trees in this game, but he's up there slapping rebounds all over the place, and he's very good at it. It's one of like his great skills and one of his like heady things he does all the time. But there were a few times where he slapped it out and it was just like, oh, well, a Thunder guy has it now and he's going to go and score. It was what he had to do because the battle on the boards was just so difficult, such a daunting thing to overcome. Slapping it out was kind of his best recourse, but it didn't quite play out super well for the Raptors in this game. They had like 130 points per possession, points per 100 in transition in this game. It wasn't a huge like frequency game for the Thunder. They played a lot of this game in the half court. And again, that's where their kind of defensive connectivity kind of did them in, but didn't do themselves any favors with those missed shots around the rim that led to easy runouts the other way. Offensive process wise, like if we're talking about actual sort of things that have been recurring stories with this team, that was very much the problem in the second and third quarters for them, right? Like, just so much of the same story we've seen in their darkest hours on that end in this game, like slow developing plays, leaning way too much on the off-ball stuff, trying to spring Brandon Ingram loose to a good spot to catch the ball, go to work. And then when Lou Dort is the guy guarding Ingram, like, I just think you got to try something else. And I thought they kind of tried to make fetch happen a little bit too much with Ingram going at Dort. And like, there's a documented history of this, of Lou Dort just kind of putting Brandon Ingram in jail. The playoffs, the last time Ingram was there with the Pelicans, did not go very well in the first round, as Dort, it admittedly injured Ingram, who, I thought in this game found some moments to kind of make an effect on offense, but they weren't really when Lou Dort was guarding him in single coverage. Like, he's just an absolute freight train. And there were some possessions where, like, Ingram in theory is the guy who's kind of like dictating the terms. He's the guy with the ball. He's the guy trying to get some downhill momentum going. And there were like 2 or 3 times where Dort was just like, well, no, you're not going to drive into me. And in fact, I'm going to push you back. And he kind of looked, Ingram did, like a rookie offensive lineman up against like 1999 Javon Curse, just completely getting run off the line to the point that he was like dancing with the half court line and trying to avoid a half court violation, or a backcourt violation, just because Dort was so strong and pushing him back. And I think they had to find other ways to get Ingram the ball. And again, like the times where he was successful in this game, Fourth quarter, 2 possessions in a row. He scores 5 straight points to make it 101-96, nearly completing the comeback. You have an Emmanuel quickly drive-in kick to Ingram spotting up on the wing. He bangs a 3. Great. The next time down, Scottie runs a pick and roll with Ingram, sets the screen, gets the switch of Chet Holmgren onto Ingram, and Ingram can go to work, gets a baseline Jimmy to go. Anytime Dort was just a single coverage guy, and I mean, God forbid they send extra help in those situations, like Ingram was just drawing dead, and I didn't think they were creative enough in trying to get him the ball in different ways. I mean, there was a really bad post entry from Quickly in the fourth quarter, actually kind of the worst offensive process they had in the entire quarter, where Quickly just like telegraphed an entry pass into Ingram with 2 guys draped all over him, turnover the other way. And that was, I think, a pretty recurring story in the second and third quarters of this game as well, right? Just like taking forever to get something going. And I'll get into it in a little more depth in the final segment, but I do think this was a game that was just screaming for the Raptors to kind of try something different, inject some new ideas, try some just like basic pick and roll stuff to try to, vary up what they were doing, because the Thunder had what they were doing sniffed out, and they just weren't getting the ball to their guys in the spots that they typically like to get the ball to their guys in. And I think they needed some more sort of ingenuity with how they were running the offense. We'll get into that and a little bit more coming up in just a second as we get to the good, the bad, the to round out the show. And we'll talk about RJ Barrett again, because man, oh man, he was just like the lifeblood of their offense for a long stretch of this game. We'll talk about that in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by friends over at Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. You're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. It is being put in front of the people you want to apply for your job. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I'll be talking to you right now, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes you need with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job to the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support this show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this here podcast, Locked On Raptors. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, wrapping things up here with the good, the bad, and the That's how we wrap up every single episode of this here podcast on the heels of a Toronto Raptors basketball game. A thing I liked, a thing I didn't like, and this got me a wee bit intrigued from the latest in Raptors hoops. We'll start with the good. RJ Barrett. Really nice to see him find his groove again. Easily his best game since getting healthy again. 8 of 15 overall, 21 points, 8 boards. He was big on the glass in a game where the Raptors badly needed people to be big on the glass. 4 assists, just 2 turnovers, a steal, and a block. Again, one of the better defensive quarters I think I've ever seen from him in that fourth quarter against the Thunder last night. And when the threes are falling for RJ, 4 of 6, like, if he can get 3 of 6, 3 of 7, 4 of 8, like that's the sweet spot for him to just be that outlet and be a reliable enough, effective enough shooter. He's maybe not necessarily going to draw a ton of attention as a shooter all the time. It might, wax and wane based on whether he's hot or not. But when they're going and he's eager to take them, like they're just a huge release valve for the offense. And it was great to see them going last night. Continues to be a really good transition finisher and all that good stuff. Really great to see RJ kind of find his groove once again. And the 3-point shooting, man, so big to have that back in the bag for him. The bad for me, I think this is probably the roughest Mamu game of the entire season. Just looked totally out of sync defensively. Like there were a couple times where you could see like he totally like duffed an assignment. And I think there was one instance where like Jamal Shed was just like, dude, that's on you. Like you got to be there. Like, and like, it's all what teams do. You sort of direct guys and do the things they got to do if they're not doing them and all that. But yeah, definitely a pretty out of sorts game from Mamu in this one. Just 3 points, 1 of 7 from the field, just 1 of 4 from deep as well. And defensively just looked really like if there was a sore spot in sort of individual one-on-one defense in this game, I think it was very clearly Mamu when he was out there. And I think, he only played 15 minutes. That's usually well below where he typically comes in. I think that was totally justified. This was not a banner night for Mamu. That's okay. These things happen. This is why guys are bench players. They're not going to do it every single night for you, but they needed Mamu big in this one. And hey, it's a really good thing that they got the nights they did from Jamal Shed and Jacoby Walter to kind of fill in the offensive gaps. If you're not getting that bench production from Mamu, it's usually been hard to find elsewhere, but you get 17 from Walter, 13 from Shed. They both hit their threes. They go combined 7 of 11 from deep. Like that was massive. Helped to fill in and make so the Mamu rough night was a little bit less felt, but I think he was certainly the standout, not so good guy out there for the Raptors in this one. And I'll go a little longer on this one than I usually do with the but I do think watching this game and just sort of thinking about the offense, there's some stuff I'd like to see them maybe try a little bit more. And look, let me preface all of this by saying Darko Rajakovic has more basketball knowledge in his pinky finger right now than I will have in 100 lifetimes in my entire body. He is a very smart guy. There's a reason he is an NBA coach and I am a podcaster. But that said, I think there's room for the Raptors to experiment a little bit more with the old reliable, most classic and basic play in any team's playbook, just standard pick and roll. And I think the Raptors are leaving some points on the table by being pretty reticent to bust it out as sort of, at the very least, like a fail-safe option when things aren't going very well. The Raptors rank 25th in the NBA in pick and roll possessions run per game per synergy. And for a team that often struggles to get things going in the half court, I do wonder if they could maybe tap into pick and roll as just like, again, like an insurance play a little bit more often. And look, there are reasons why they don't do it, right? Like the personnel in the team is not necessarily the most conducive to running a million pick and rolls. They don't have a Donovan Mitchell, a Trae Young. They don't have like your classic pick and roll ball handling guard who's going to run 100 pick and rolls a game and sort of guide every possession through that sort of entry point. That's not how this team is built. They also don't have like a wealth of really good roll men, right? We'll talk about the numbers for some of their roll men. They're very good, but they're not traditional necessarily. They don't have like a classic, fly in the air and sky for lob finishes and things like that, finisher on the roll. It's not something they're totally equipped to run, again, as their sort of baseline offense. And I don't think they should run it necessarily as their baseline offense, but they're 25th in the league in pick and rolls run. And their offense just feels stuck in mud sometimes when they kind of stick to their core principles. And I just think there may be some room to kind of play around with it, especially because they're not stocked with the most robust collection of outstanding pick and roll operators or finishers, but they got a lot of guys who grade out like pretty well when they do it. Brandon Ingram is a 61st percentile pick and roll ball handler, including shots or one pass away per synergy. So, when he takes a look or he passes to a guy who shoots, the Raptors scored a 61st percentile clip. That's good. That's like upper half of the league. 75th percentile, by the way, when the defense commits with like a soft double or a switch or something that contorts the defense as opposed to just playing it straight up. So, like, again, if you kind of force teams to make decisions, Brandon Ingram has shown like he can either score and finish over mismatches and switches, or he can make those passes at a soft doubles and, have successful things come from it. 75th percentile is very good. Emmanuel Quickly, 79th percentile pick and roll ball handler, including shots or shots one pass away. Jamal Shed, not someone I thought his number was going to come in a lot lower, frankly, but 57th percentile, like upper half of the league as a pick and roll ball handler when you factor in his shots or shots one pass away. And so they've got like those three guys in particular. I think they can probably uptick the amount they ask Ingram, Quickly, and Shed to run pick and roll. Ingram in particular, like I think he's someone who, like we saw, there were a couple really nice reads he made to Pirtle in the last game on Sunday. He's made some nice pick and roll reads of late to Colin Murray-Boyles as a roll man. Like I think he's got it in him. And I think it'd be a good way to get the ball to him in different situations, in different spots on the floor, higher up in sort of the backcourt where you can kind of get downhill in a way that he hasn't been able to all the time when they kind of force it to him on the low block. And again, just kind of to diversify things. He's shown he's got good pick and roll craft in sort of the grand scheme of the league. They just don't run it very often with him. And then as far as roll men go, like they've got roll men whose numbers are quite good. Jakob Pirtle, I mean, he's the guy, 20% of his possessions are pick and rolls, and where he's the roll man. Like that's good. Maybe he wanted to be 22, 23, 25, but he's a 1.24 points per possession when he's the roller in pick and roll, 72nd percentile per synergy. That's very good. Scottie Barnes, this is the one where I think like they're just leaving low-hanging fruit on the tree a little bit with this. He's at 1.34 points per possession as a roll man, 83rd percentile, very, very good. And he only is the roll man on 5% of his possessions. And I think we see it sometimes when they're bogged down and they go to just like a Quickly Barnes pick and roll. they get good stuff out of it. Ingram Barnes pick and roll. If you're playing against a team that maybe doesn't have the size and the horses to fully switch that in a way where it's kind of like size guy for like size guy, especially if Barnes is playing as a center and you have a center to maybe, kind of exploit like we saw last night. There were a couple situations where they ran that pick and roll, Barnes screening for Ingram, and they got the Chet Holmgren switch. Like, I think there's something more here with Barnes as a role man in particular that is not quite tapping into. Colin Murray-Boyles, 57th percentile as a role man as well. Like, he's not bad. He's figured out a way to kind of, scrape across just enough. Mamu is only 41st percentile, but one thing they're not really using with him is pick and pops. And as a shooter, as dynamic as him, they've only run 29 pick and pops with him all season long. That feels like a bit of an untapped play type for him. I even think they should be running IQ as a screener more often. Like, Quickly, rarely ever screens. Per synergy, he's only set 10 screens for pick and roll ball handlers all season long. Like, that's something they could probably weaponize a little bit more. I mean, we think this is the team that made the Siakam Lowry or Lowry Siakam inverted pick and roll so dynamic and was such a killer play for them. There's no reason why they can't tap into a little bit more with Quickly and Barnes in particular. Like, have Quickly screen for Barnes, have Quickly screen for Ingram, put two shooters in that situation. Ingram's shooting well enough right now, and he draws close and he draws attention. Like, those two guys in concert with one another in a two-man game, I think could produce a lot for you. And look, again, there's limiting factors, right? No one on this team is an elite ball handler. Obviously they've not had Jakob Poeltl for most of the season. He's their best pick and roll big man. No one is an exceptional screener on this team outside of Poeltl, and maybe Colin Murray-Boyles is getting there. Barnes is okay when he wants to do it, but he's also not the most willing or sort of sturdy screener. All that stuff is reasons why they don't do it. They also are just not loaded with great shooting to kind of dot around pick and roll. They can't run traditional spread pick and roll with most of their best lineups because they play a couple of non-shooters. And so there are reasons for this, but I think you can kind of engineer the floor, use the dunker spot, sort of space guys out in a way that makes it more viable. And I just, again, I don't think this should be the base of their offense. I just think it should be something they lean on a little bit more when things get dire. And I'm curious, and I'll probably ask Darko about it tonight before the Spurs game, and he'll probably tell me all the things, all the very real reasons why they don't do it, because he's smarter than me. But I do think it is something the Raptors should probably just entertain a little bit more, because just the math suggests that when they run pick and roll with certain combinations of guys, the team scores a lot of points in those situations. And in a lot of these games, like in that game against the Thunder, there are situations where they just need to score more points, and that might be an avenue to go and do that. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much, as always, for rocking with the show, supporting it however it is you choose to do so. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. As always, it's much appreciated. You can join the Discord, link in the description of the podcast, 100% free to join. You can also join the Locked On Raptors Everydayer Club, link also down there in the description. $5 a month, $50 for the year, gets you ad-free episodes of the show and access to the Locked On network-wide Discord, which is a lot of fun. And we'll leave it there. We'll be back again on Thursday to talk about Raptors Spurs and my first exposure to Wemby in person. Can't wait. Kind of horrified. Going to be really fun. Looking forward to that big time tonight, even if it is going to be a 30-point loss, perhaps for the Raptors. We'll see if Scottie Barnes even plays. He had the knock with his knee, of course, late in that game. So hopefully he's available. If not, could be a bit of a rough night, but we get to watch Wemby play basketball in person, which is kind of a cool thing on its own. So we'll leave it there. We'll talk to you Thursday. Have a great one. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye. Ugh.